Hey folks, Kevin Mullen with Mullen Associates here. I wanted to tell you about a change that occurred through legislation from 2021 that now is impacting the 2021 tax filings here in 2022. The education credits have been a little unusual for the past, 14 years or so since the American Opportunity Credit was launched in 2008. Essentially, there used to be 3 tax credits. Now there are 2 for education purposes. One is really, really good. The American Opportunity Credit is a much higher credit as far as how much you spend and how much you get. So the American Opportunity Credit is a situation where you spend $4,000 and you get a credit of $2,500, so $2,500. However, that American Opportunity Credit can only be used under certain circumstances. You have to qualify, and it can only be used for 4 years. So you only get 4 years use of the credit. So you parents out there who have a child who's just going to school in the fall semester, it may not be worth using one of your 4 good years of the credit. You may want to delay until they're in school for the entire year, depending on the cost of the tuition and the related expenses that we're able to use. Books and supplies, computers, laptops, etc. No, gas or clothes or dormitories, those generally don't qualify under this credit. Now, that being said, the American Opportunity Credit is the really, really good credit. Now, instead of the American Opportunity Credit, you may choose to use, or you may have to use, what's called the Lifetime Learning Credit. The Lifetime Learning Credit is a little different. So remember, the American Opportunity Credit is you spend $4,000 and you get $2,500. The Lifetime Learning Credit is a situation in which you spend $10,000 and you get $2,000. So that credit is a straight 20%. This credit does not qualify, or you can't qualify for additional credit by having other expenditures, such as, computer, books, and supplies, and those items that I mentioned. Instead, this is purely based off of tuition only. So the Lifetime Learning Credit is not as good of an education credit. You have to spend more, you get less, and it's less flexible. But the Lifetime Learning Credit has no limitations, or very few limitations, in regards to what qualifies. The other thing that I will mention that really changed in 2021 for legislative purposes is when and how those credits apply. So the American Opportunity Credit has had what's called a phase-out limitation. And essentially what that means is as your income hits a certain threshold, you begin to phase out the education credit. So that's at $160,000 for married filing joint filers. By about $180,000 of adjusted gross income, you then phase that credit out entirely. So if you have $180,100 of adjusted gross income, no matter how much you paid in tuition, you will not see a tax credit. Prior to 2021, the Lifetime Learning Credit, the other credit, the one that's not quite as good, this credit phased out at about $132,000 of adjusted gross income, which meant that many taxpayers who were in the middle class were not able to take advantage of this credit. So they either got 4 years of the American Opportunity Credit or nothing. Now, what changed from 2021 or in 2021 is the phase out range, not of the American Opportunity Credit, which remains the same, but instead the phase out range of the Lifetime Learning Credit was increased to match the American Opportunity Credit. Which is great. It makes it a whole lot easier to determine, whether you qualify for one of these credits, since they both fall under the same phase-out range. Also, it makes it easier to decide not to use one of those 4 good years of the American Opportunity Credit if you feel like you're not going to get the entirety of the credit because you didn't expend enough on tuition and supplies. And so now it's not so bad to have to default to the Lifetime Learning Credit. Lot more context here. Really, it's tough making tax videos because I could go on for hours and hours about all of the intricacies and the nuance. So one thing that I would recommend is that if you have a question about your specific situation, don't watch a video. Don't watch this video. Call a personal tax advisor to give you specific context to your specific situation. You see, the reality is this is why there's not a lot of good tax information out there. Because if I put out a video like this, it may come across as if I'm giving advice to every single person. The reality is the tax code is a lot more complex than most people understand. In fact, the IRS using the law very often loses in tax court because the tax laws themselves are not a predetermined exact science. So part of my job as a tax advisor is to use your individual facts and circumstances to figure out how the law best applies. So it's not one size fits all. If you've got students going to school, you should seek advice from a competent tax advisor. My last warning for you, my last one, is you got to be so careful with your kids claiming the tuition on their own tax return. This is so common. Your child will get their little W-2 from their part-time job at school. They'll grab their tuition statement and they'll file their tax return without talking to you. And if that happens, or you students out there who are listening to this, don't do this. You need to coordinate this carefully. It could be the difference in you receiving a student receiving a $1,000 credit for the education deductions and a parent receiving a $2,500 credit. So don't miss out on the entirety of the credit. Don't make that decision flippantly. Make sure you're getting great tax advice. Thanks so much. Have a great one.